Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to Dunsfold Cricket Club in Surrey. So I've come here today to do one of my shoe-offs, and this time I've got three quite popular shoes. I've got the Endorphin Speed, which I've actually got on my feet, so I'll show them in a minute. I've got the Nike Tempo Next Percent here, which is probably one of the most diverse of opinions of shoes that have come out this year, if not the most. Of all the sort of traditional shoe reviewers, Sestimore cut his up, he didn't think much of them. Andy, the Forest Dean runner, was swearing at them on his first video and has already sent them back. 40 runs, he's basically said they're a complete waste of time, don't waste your money. And yet other people like Ed Bud seem to like them. The running channel were very positive. My first run was probably erring more on the side of pretty rubbish, to be honest, but I think I was trying to be a bit pragmatic. But anyway, I thought today I'd actually try and do some real world testing. Now this morning I actually did my project sub 60 400 meter first attempt. I did 62.58, so I'm feeling a bit weary, but I thought in a way that might be a good time to do this shoe test to see whether these shoes can actually help. So what I'm going to do, I've got the Endorphin Speeds on. I'm going to do just over a 2 mile circuit around here that I've done before. It's a bit rolly, and I'll take whatever speed I can get in that, and I'll try and replicate in the Tempo Next Percent and finish it off with the Alphaflys. Now there was a dropout today in the UK, so fortunately I'd picked up a pair of these Alphaflys a few months ago, so I didn't need to dash for the odd pair that I had going again. But so frustrating with these shoes, isn't it, that's so hard to come by. And here are the Endorphin Speeds that I've already got on my first run. Okay, so I've already done a little warm-up, just trying to stretch the legs out a bit because I've been feeling rather tired after my 400, but I thought it'd be a good test on increasingly softer shoes to see which one is of interest. And certainly when I put the Tempo Next Percent on second, how am I going to get on? Because it's quite a hilly circuit this, so will that 351 grams in my UK 13 make up all those hills? And then will the Alphafly shine at the end, as it might expect? But anyway, right, so interesting test coming along, and I'll get myself ready for the first rep, and off we go. Okay, so first run down the Endorphin Speeds. I must say that felt better than I thought, actually. I was about 6:45 pace and quite a rolling circuit. There's two little sapping hills on that one after about 3/4 of a mile into it, quite sort of short, but just about 5%. There's one bigger one towards the end of the loop, just over 2 miles the loop, which takes about a minute to run up and does rather sap you. But yeah, so 6:45 on that pace is probably worth about 6:35, 6:40 pace. So Endorphin Speeds felt really good on that one, actually. My legs are a bit tired, as you might imagine, from the 400 meter race earlier when I did 62.58 seconds. So I was near 4-minute mile pace there, and I was just going slower than 7-minute mile pace there. So I always think with training that I like to do different speeds. So when you've done a bit of work at 4-minute mile pace, then sort of marathon then pace becomes, yeah, maybe just that bit easier, but I only did 2 miles, of course. So now I've got the Tempo Next Percents on. One thing I did notice about the Tempo Next Percent, so on my second run, this will be now my third run in them, the fly net has rather loosened out. So initially I said they were rather narrow in my initial review, and now I'm kind of finding, well, maybe they're a bit more roomy like the Alphafly. Because if I touch the outside of the shoe here, I've got quite a lot of spare material in there, and you can see I'm having to cinch down these laces quite a lot. If you look on both sides there, these are quite turned, and I was getting a bit of folding, so there's a lot of material here. It's the right size though for me. I've got a thumb width there. I think I could fit into a 12 in a Nike, but they're always right up against the toe box, and it always feels more comfortable in a 13 to have that sort of room. So all the shoes today are 13. I've got the Endorphin Speed as well in a 13 as well. Right, so let's get this on. I'm sort of fully recovered now, so what I'm going to try and do is use racing activity on the Garmin to try and get that time exactly more or less within a few seconds of the first one, and see how I feel in these shoes. Now these will definitely be the lot heaviest shoes of the three. If you sort of take it rounding up to the nearest sort of 10 grams, we're talking 350 grams in my UK 13 in the Tempo Next Percent. We're talking about 280 in the Endorphin Speeds, and we're talking just over 300 in the Alphafly. Okay, run done in the Tempo Next Percent. Well, it wasn't too bad. Just initially it felt really clunky. I actually felt quite nice running downhill. It kind of felt a bit of a struggle on the uphills. I think actually my time was marginally quicker. I was always ahead on that all the way around, so I was able to sort of take it quite easy after the first half a mile, say. I just felt like gut feeling, it just don't feel like nice to run in. It feels like you're running on some sort of experimental shoe with just bunged together a load of stuff. Like more is better. All the React they could find, all the Zoom X they could find, all the Nike Air they could find, all the new Atom knit they can find, and then bunged it in a shoe. But yeah, it's sort of effective, but you're kind of thinking, oh, 2 miles in that, and it was a really hilly course, would that be a struggle? So I don't know, I'm still thinking that even this is a shoe that sort of tests well, just doesn't feel like nice to run in. I don't know, it just feels odd. Anyway, the Alphafly I've put on, and immediately the Alphafly I feel a lot softer than the Tempo Next. Maybe it's because of the fact it's all ZoomX in the cushioning, not that ZoomX and React mixture. I also feel in the Alphafly I got this much more arch support digging into me, which doesn't tend to notice when I run, but just standing around it feels like that. So let's get this last one done and see how they compare. Okay, see you later. Hello, so run done in the Alphaflys. Well, if I said the Tempo Next percent felt clunky, kind of the Alphaflys did as well, I think. Maybe because I'm just really tired legs now, because I was effectively doing 2 sessions in one day because of the 400-meter race at lunchtime. And that was quite hard work, but I did manage to run that with the Alphafly pretty much the identical speed to the Tempo Next, which both of those two were just about 5 seconds quicker than the Endorphin Speed. Looking at my heart rate just then, I think it looks like it might be fractionally lower than the Alphaflys. It sort of felt like on the uphills, I could feel the weight as well. It just felt clunky. I think because these shoes are more like sort of slip-ons for me, and because I've got narrow feet, slip-on shoes never sit well with me. So I like to have a good way of locking down the midsole. And when these kind of slip-on shoes like the Tempo Next and the Alphafly, which could have designed more like sort of socks, it's much more difficult because A, there's less laces, and they feel just a bit wider than the Next percent and the Endorphin Speed anyway. And the Endorphin Speed is not exactly a narrow shoe, but you've got traditional laces on that, and I can sink them down quite nicely, and I feel comfortable in them. And also the fact that they're 20 grams lighter than the Alphafly and the whole 70 grams lighter than the Tempo Next. So all in all, I kind of felt like the Endorphin Speed kind of feels like the nicest to run in, even if it isn't necessarily the fastest. So on that evidence, there's not a huge amount in it, to be honest. I think the Tempo Next is kind of like, you know, struggling to get up those hills at the end. And if I'd taken that out from, say, a 2.2 mile sort of marathon pace sort of test run to a proper sort of 10K, 10 mile pace, a run at that sort of pace, would I have felt the same after that? Maybe I'll have to do that soon just to get that on feel. But yeah, I think I'd sort of definitely say that the Tempo Next were disappointing. I wouldn't say that it's like, you know, it's like the worst shoe, because I think in my size, don't forget that it's a lot heavier than most people. So if you've got more average feet, which I'm sure most people have, then these differences in weights probably won't be so pronounced. But certainly, if you think you're getting a cheap Alphafly, well, I suppose you are really, because I mean, those 2 times were pretty similar. I need to go indoors and have a look at it, but yes, the impression is that the Endorphin Speed just feels nicer to run in. Whether it's actually the race shoe is another matter, but you know, the Endorphin Pro, I've got the Next percent, I've got the Hyperion Elite 2 come in to give more testing too. Got a half an eye on the Adios Pro, and then the New Balance RC is also coming on tap soon, I think, as well. So many shoes to compete with these ones, and maybe at the end of the day, all you need to do get out is and do some racing and improve your fitness, and whatever shoes you wear, you won't be far off. But anyway, so I'll come back in later, look at the data, and we'll talk about things more. Okay, thanks for coming along. Bye. Hello, so here's my spreadsheet of all these runs. So the key bit here is I did the Endorphin Speed, Tempo Next percent, and Alphafly one after another around this 2.16 mile circuit. And the first one I just ran pretty much as I felt, and as it turned out, it got it pretty much exactly on my marathon pace. I did 14:33 for a 6:44, which is almost exactly the 2:56 that I did in Seville in February. And for that, I got an average heart rate of 131 with a maximum of 145. And if you look, the 145 was actually the top of Knighton's Hill, which is a rather steep one towards the end of the circuit, where I got the maximum heart rate in all the runs, I think. So then I went into the Tempo Next percent, trying to do pretty much the same time. Got that reasonably close, just a fraction quicker. I think I went off a bit quicker. If you see on Alford Road, I did that first bit a bit too quick, and I had to sort of rein it back a bit. So, but yeah, reasonably similar effort, just a bit faster. Average heart rate, not unsurprisingly, went up because that was the second run. It could be a factor of the shoes, but interesting, the max heart rate was exactly the same. And that was also seen on Knighton's Hill. Now the Tempo Next percent being a bit heavier, I did feel like I was struggling a bit more on the uphills, although it was quite nice on the downhills. It kind of actually felt that React foam let me to sort of brake a bit going downhill. So then I put on the Alphafly and kind of expecting a massive step in performance, but I didn't actually see that really. I think it also felt a bit clunky, and I managed to get that exactly the same time with only just a very marginal drop in heart rate. Now the max heart rate there of 142, you might think, well, that's 3 beats less. Well, that's great, but I think what happened is that I actually did that last hill perhaps slightly easier. So you notice there it was 2 seconds slower than the tempo next percent and 5 seconds slower than the speed. So that may partly explain why the max heart rate only got to 141. Could also be, of course, that the Alphafly is just a lot faster shoe. So I think the interesting thing here is not as much of a huge difference in performance, just looking at heart rate and the actual speed I went, than you might have imagined. So let's have a quick look at some of the other stats. The power, as usual, all fairly similar, slightly higher air percent power in the Alphafly. If I take that out and just look at the net contribution, then they're all pretty similar, especially the fact that they're just marginally slower than Endorphin Speed, which might explain why there's just a few watts less. Cadence was all pretty much similar. I kind of feel with the Alphafly and Tempo Next that I feel like I'm striding out more and bouncing higher, and it is, as you see, they're 1 steps per minute less, but that's almost insignificant in a way. You know, if I looked at the extra 0.1, how close would that be? So I can't see I can read too much into that. I did note on my initial run with the Tempo Next that I thought I was having a high VO, and sure enough, you can see that the VO in the Tempo Next and the Alphafly are significantly higher than the Endorphin Speed. So that's quite interesting. And the ground contact time, perhaps in compensation, the Endorphin Speed ground contact time is just marginally less, as is the leg spring stiffness. I mean, that might reflect the fact that although these shoes are all quite soft, the Tempo Next and Alphafly are obviously extremely soft as they go, despite the fact that they've got these plates. So that might partially explain that. So yeah, the general purpose of this shoe off really was to see whether the Tempo Next percent could actually perform at all really, given the mixed reviews that it's had. And I think, well, on this evidence, yeah, it probably can. I think just probably I just don't really like running in it. It just feels awkward. But you can't really argue that these stats aren't too bad. If it's meant to be the training part of the world's most expensive road race shoe, then these stats sort of show it hasn't actually too bad. I think what will be more telling though is I took this Tempo Next percent out for a lot longer run, say like a 10 mile or a half marathon, roundabout sort of marathon pace on a similar type of terrain, and see how it shapes up then. Just had this nagging feeling with the Tempo Next percent that it was fine for this sort of run, just about a quarter of an hour, but if I take it out for sort of 10 miles up to a half marathon, maybe a bit longer, then will those sort of hills start to really tell? Because I already felt on these 2 drags that it was a bit harder work to get up than perhaps I'd expected. But yeah, the times didn't really lie in the end, so interesting test nonetheless. So, hope you found this interesting, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one then. Bye! So a little historical interlude, the war memorial for the fallen of Dunsfold in the Great War and the Second World War behind me. I always rather find it's a rather imposing entrance to the Dunsfold Cricket Club. So let's go and have a closer look.